Trevor Story might be finding his stride offensively for the Boston Red Sox as he has a big game to keep the Red Sox playoff hopes alive for at least one more night.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free. So you might as well check it out because Locked On is your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Locked On Red Sox, the show where we're positive when it's necessary, maybe sometimes try to stay positive until it's mathematically impossible to not be. But I also talk about what's necessary. And if the Red Sox aren't playing well, then I very much talk about that. You just have to be honest and open. So if you like that kind of thing, this is the show for you. But here we sit here today on this Wednesday with the Red Sox having 4 games left and still somehow not being mathematically eliminated yet from the postseason. How? That's the question everybody's asking today, I think, as the Red Sox hung on by a thread in a 6-5 win over the Blue Jays last night. And talk about an absolute nail-biter. I mean, so many different things that went on in that game, and the Red Sox rallied from down 3-0 to win it too, as they just have some fire in them, and this is do or die. Every single game is do or die for them now because they have to win out to even just have a chance at the playoffs. So they're trying to do everything they can to control their own destiny while hoping they get some luck on their side and help from other teams as well. So going to be diving into a lot of what happened in last night's game, including the many crazy moves Alex Cora made to the roster in the middle of the game and the maneuvers that were made because it was very confusing. So we're going to be talking about that as well as a couple of key players that stood out in the game. But Trevor Story has been a name that has been tossed around a lot because he was here last year, struggled at the plate, but made great plays defensively, and then started this season and ended up on the injured list almost instantly, only a few days after the season started. And it was heartbreaking because for the longest time, the news was that he wouldn't be able to come back this year at all to the team. So when he ended up being ahead of schedule in his recovery and was able to be activated and make it back to the team for this last month of the season, it was fantastic news for him and also good news for the Red Sox, a team that definitely had its fair share of defensive blunders throughout the course of this season. And Trevor Story definitely has not been shy of showcasing his defense, and it was on full display last night because late in the game, there was a play. It was a fly ball hit to the outfield, and Wilyer Abreu and Cedar Rafaela both went for it, and they ended up colliding into each other because neither one made a big motion with their arm to show that they have the ball. And if you try to yell to each other, you can't always hear when you're in a loud ballpark like that. So miscommunication there, they crashed into each other and the ball dropped. So the error was charged to Abreu because it should have been Rafaela's ball. But Trevor Story saved the inning because following that, he made a very nice throw to first base later in that inning to salvage and save the inning for the Red Sox. And that ultimately was key to them winning that game. Was he put his defense on full display and took away at least one run from the Blue Jays and basically making up for the error that his teammates made. So they should be thanking him for that effort defensively. And that's nothing new for Story. I mean, his defense is the most notable thing about his ability level as a player right now. His defense has always been one of his strongest assets of his game. And when the Red Sox brought him to Boston, they knew they were going to hopefully see a lot of that strong defense on full display. And that's exactly what happened. And when he saves runs and makes these acrobatic plays at shortstop defensively, I mean, that's fantastic to see. So he definitely has come back and made a really good impression on defense. And he's somebody who struggled a lot at the plate last year, but in his return to this Red Sox team, he has certainly shown a lot of improvement at the plate and is making things happen offensively. In last night's game, when the Red Sox won a thrilling 6-5 game in 10 innings, he was playing shortstop and got 2 hits. He went 2 for 5 in the game. He did strike out 3 times, but he drove in a run. So he got a couple key hits in the game. One was a double early on in the second inning. Unfortunately, the Red Sox were unable to take advantage of that double and get a run in, which they did do multiple times in this game too, was strand runners on base. So they definitely missed some opportunities to drive in runs even more so. So they could have scored more than 6 runs in the game, but I think we've gotten used to that with this Red Sox offense as of late. But Story crushed a double, and that was a big at-bat for him. And then also he hit another double in the top of the 10th inning that scored Jarren Duran, which at the time gave the Red Sox a 4-3 lead. So he had a pretty big game for him, and considering everything and considering how much his offense struggled last year. So the question becomes, is Trevor Story figuring it out? Because not even just based on last night's game, but ever since coming back, he's been hitting really well. He has a .318 batting average over his last 6 games, going 2 for 5 last night with that extra innings RBI. He has recorded a 1.014 OPS over that span with a home run and 3 doubles. So that's definitely a stat line that you want to see out of Story. I mean, currently hitting .259 now on the season. And for example, on September 17th, his average was a .238. So he has been slowly creeping up because he's had multiple 2-hit games in there. On September 18th against the Rays, he had 2 hits in that game and drove in a run. On September 20th versus the Twins, 2 hits and an RBI. He also took 2 walks in that game. And then last night, 2 hits and an RBI. So he has been stringing together some hits. And September 14th against the Yankees, he had a 3-hit game. So this is a lot more productivity than we're used to seeing from Trevor Story, because we're used to seeing him go 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts a lot. Like, we're not used to seeing lots of hits for him across the stat sheet, but that is something that's been taking place as of late, is him recording those hits. And it's really nice to see, because we want him to be in a position where he's contributing offensively. And even this season, I mean, in the beginning of the season, before he got injured, he was batting just .226. Obviously, a small sample size there because it was only through 8 games and 34 plate appearances. And he was hitting .226, but now in September, since coming back, 14 games that he's appeared in and 55 plate appearances as opposed to 34. And he's batting .265 with a .346 on base percentage as opposed to a .294 on base percentage in April. So he's taking his walks. That's another big thing that this Red Sox lineup did a lot of last night and the night before, was take a lot of walks. And even his slugging went from a .323 to a .408 since coming back from the injured list. So the question here becomes, is he starting to figure things out? And I feel like he is. I feel like he came back from the injured list with a sense of vengeance. Like, I want to show that I still have it and that I'll be a valuable contribution to this team down the road. So going into next season, Story needs to keep up that firepower offensively because the Red Sox could really use his bat. And based on the numbers that he puts up, we saw tons of lacking of swinging from him coming and productive swings and putting together at bats that felt useless and felt like a waste because he would just strike out, and he was absolutely abysmal last year at the plate. The fact that he's not absolutely abysmal now, yes, he still needs to cut down on the strikeouts. That's a major issue for him that remains, but he's having more productive at bats now. And that's the thing that I'm noticing that's different. And maybe the injury and going through the recovery process that he went through this year has worked miracles for him, and that he can carry this over into next year. Because what I'm looking for him to carry over into next year is being able to turn a lot of those unproductive at-bats into productive at-bats. One of the biggest things I picked up about Story this year and this last month since returning from the IL. So definitely something I'm looking out for. That's something that's been impressive to me about him. Lots more productive at-bats than he had last year and early on in the season before he got injured this year. So I'm rooting for him. He clearly was so happy to have that type of at-bat that he did have. So I'm hoping to see more of that as we progress through the rest of the season here, because a healthy Trevor Story who figures things out at the plate is going to serve as a great offensive weapon moving forward. Coming up, I'm going to be talking about another player who has spent a good amount of time, unfortunately, on the injured list for the Red Sox, and he had a big game on Tuesday night. Was it a fluke, or is he figuring it out? You'll find out. This episode of Locked On Red Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. I love Booking.com because it has a wide variety of choices across the U.S., so you can literally go incognito to all your baseball rivals' cities, and you can get great deals on places to stay. So it gives you a reason to want to go to all these places. I mean, Booking.com has been great to me. My fiance and I are making it a goal of ours to eventually go to every major league ballpark. So because that's going to involve long trips to some cities, we're definitely going to be using Booking.com to book hotels, and you should too the next time you have to travel. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. I'm telling you, it's going to be a game changer, especially if you're planning on going to any postseason games this year for baseball. It certainly will help you out a lot. You know what else will help you out a lot is a place where you can make lots of money, and that's FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel wins you lots of money. You can bet on all different kinds of things on a regular basis. Sports are year-round. Some parts of the year have more sports than others, but you can still capitalize and take advantage of what's out there. So head to FanDuel today if you are even remotely interested in sports betting, because I promise it'll change your life. In talking about the Boston Red Sox and what was a dramatic win last night, they had a lot of key moments in that game, like Cedar Rafaela had a big moment by driving in a pair of runs, which gave him 61 RBIs from the 9-hole this year, which is the most in Red Sox team history, that he tied with Jason Varitek. So Varitek also had 61 RBIs out of the 9-hole in 2003. So talk about impressive by Rafaela. I mean, he thrives in high leverage situations when he's at the plate, when he needs to come in big. He's done it multiple times this year where there have been runners on base for the Red Sox and he's come in to hit, and he's come through with a big hit. But he struggles a lot when there are not runners on base. So that's something that he needs to work on for next year, as well as his plate discipline, because he still doesn't really take walks and isn't patient at the plate, and that's something that has cost him a lot this year. So that's something I'm looking at with him going into next season. But another player who had a big game that we've been waiting on is Vaughn Grissom. Now, Grissom in this game was in to play second base, and he went 3 for 4. Big game for him, scored a run, drove in a run, and also took a walk. And we haven't seen any games like this from Grissom before. This was a big breakthrough moment for him. Got his batting average up to 172 on the year with this 3-hit game. And the thing with him is, since being called back up on September 20th, he only had gotten 1 hit prior to last night's game, and that was in the September 22nd 2-game set versus the Twins. He recorded a hit in one of those games and a stolen base, and he also had struck out. But this was the first big game that we have seen from him, and he has struggled in general. And it's not necessarily even in one area. It's just he hasn't been able to click in general, especially at the plate. In the first half, his batting average was 148. Second half, just 125. But, I mean, again, he's only played in 3 games in the second half, so it's a really small sample size. But the thing with the small sample size is it's hard to feel confident in saying either this is him figuring it out and he's about to go off for this Red Sox team, or this is a fluke game for him. Because either way, we are looking at a player here who is trying to solidify his spot on the roster next year. He is trying to get to the point where he can be a player who contributes, because they have Christian Campbell waiting in the rafters, who is an infield prospect who was just recently named prospect of the year. So he's a stud in the Red Sox system, and they have him who eventually they're going to want to bring up if he's still excelling the way that he is and just absolutely killing it in AAA, or even this upcoming spring, he might be in the fight for that second base starting spot. So you have these 2 guys who both really want that. And the question is now going to become which one of them is going to be the starter next year. And I'm sure that's in the back of Grissom's mind as he goes through the game now. And he was absolutely abysmal before, but this was such a big game for him. He came up clutch in a few different spots, and he definitely is the type of player that has potential, because the Red Sox know that he does. When they traded for him, they saw some potential in him that they felt like would benefit in Boston. I feel like he should get some of the benefit of the doubt because of the injuries. They have not exactly been kind to him in his time here so far. So obviously that poses the question of, one, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because that's an important thing here to think about. And for 2, when he is healthy and he goes out there, is he going to be able to make the right plays? Because he hasn't necessarily had a lot of major league experience yet. So I do worry that if they rely on him to be the starting second baseman next year, there might be some big growing pains there. But of course, there would be growing pains if they started Campbell too, because he hasn't had any time spent in the majors yet. So both of those guys are young and both have the potential to be the second baseman of the future. It's just a matter of, what does this mean for Grissom moving forward? Is this a game that he's going to take with him and build some confidence from that to say, oh, hey, I believe in myself and I can go out there and I can mash it? Because that's a big thing here for a Red Sox team that is trying to figure out who's going to be reliable for them next year. Is, can he go out there and make himself known and convince the Red Sox organization that he is a player who deserves to be here and have a regular spot on the major league team? So I would like to feel that way. I would like to say that this game was what he needed to have that breakthrough moment in his confidence of saying, okay, maybe I can do this. Because if I were in his shoes and I was really struggling in the way that he was, that would feel demoralizing to me to have to go out there every day and try to see if I can figure it out and just not be able to figure it out. I mean, that could cause some very easy frustration. So I don't necessarily envy the spot that he was in, because he comes back from injury, is playing in AAA, and is hitting really well in AAA as of late. Like in his last few games in Worcester before he got called back up to the majors, he was hitting over 300. So that caused the Red Sox to say, okay, maybe he needed more time and this is him figuring it out. So then he goes and comes up to the majors and starts to struggle again. And then you start to wonder, is this a Bobby Dahlbeck situation where he excels in Worcester, but as soon as he gets called up to the majors, he can't handle that pressure and he doesn't figure it out. And obviously you hope that's not the case, because you want him to pan out, because he was part of the Chris Sale trade. They traded Chris Sale to the Braves for him. So you want to hope that he's going to pan out. But the question is, what if he doesn't? And if he doesn't, that's going to be a tough look on the Red Sox with the season that Chris Sale is having. Now, granted, he is still very young and there are still things he's going to need to figure out with his game. But at the end of the day, this performance was very positive to me, because it's a game in which he absolutely went off and he convinced not only the Red Sox and the organization and the fans, but more importantly, himself, that he can go out there and he can do it. Because baseball is such a big mental game that you have to be able to keep those emotions in check and be able to get past those hurdles and those nerves that you're feeling. And when you're a young player making it up to the major league level, those emotions especially have to be even more in check, because it's easy to get down on yourself and say, oh, wow, I maybe don't have what it takes to succeed at the major league level. So even if this results in him being slow to finish the season over these next few games, and it causes him to maybe get into a mode of trying to figure out what it was about the performance last night that worked for him, I still feel like this is going to cause him to eventually start to hit better more consistently. Because a lot of times it just takes that one performance and then you're able to get yourself going. And we will know soon enough. I mean, not at the end of this year, but we will know going into next year, especially if he ends up being the starting second baseman, where he is really at in that process. Was this just a fluke game or not? That's something I'm looking out for with Vaughn Grissom moving forward. That's a question that still is to be answered. It is too soon to tell whether it was a fluke game or not. But all I know is that it was a really big game for him. And if we're looking at the greater scope of it, that can be huge for a young player's confidence. So I'm really hoping that he takes that and runs with it and is able to make the necessary adjustments to continue to maintain that kind of success at the plate. And hopefully the Red Sox can bring in a new hitting coach next season that can actually help these guys to improve their game and develop, unlike Pete Fatse, who has not been able to really get the most out of his hitter. So hopefully for Grissom's sake, they get somebody in there who can really work with these guys and help them cater to their strengths. In the crazy Red Sox win on Tuesday night, Alex Cora also made some pretty crazy changes to the lineup throughout in the last few innings of the game. So coming up, I'm going to try to make sense of some of those changes. If you're looking to score cheap tickets for really good views at different events, Gametime is the perfect home for you. I love going to live events like sporting events and concerts. I mean, those are some of my favorite things to do in my free time. And I've been lucky enough to be able to go to so many of those types of events lately because of Gametime. Gametime has hooked me up in so many different scenarios where they show me my view from the seat, and the tickets are way cheaper than they are on other ticketing vendors. And I've been able to look at it and say, oh, wow, those seats are really solid. And sometimes the seats won't even be on other ticketing vendors. So Gametime is the place, especially if you have multiple people going to a game and it can get really expensive. I highly recommend you using Gametime, which also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It is an amazing deal that they offer, and they guarantee that you're getting the best seats as possible or your money back. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. I have nothing but really good things to say about Gametime. In my personal experience, it's helped me get to a lot more live events than I anticipated, so it can definitely help you out too. In talking about the Red Sox dramatic 6-5 win in extra innings over the Blue Jays on Tuesday night, we saw a big game from Vaughn Grissom that could be a confidence booster for him. Too soon to tell whether it was a fluke game for him or if this is going to get him on a more consistent path to success. But I would like to feel like it's the latter, that it will lead him down the road of success for this Boston Red Sox organization. But one thing that we can look back on this 2024 Red Sox team and remember is the various chess moves that Alex Cora made during games, moving guys around, bringing in pinch hitters, bringing in pinch runners, moving around people's positions in the field. And he did a ton of that in last night's game. And I'm not kidding. I had to sit at this box score and look at it for a long time after the game ended and physically talk myself through all the moves that were made because this was so confusing in the game. So the lineup started as Jarren Duran in left field, Romy Gonzalez at third base, Tristan Casas at first base, Trevor Story at shortstop, Masataka Yoshida at DH, Vaughn Grissom at second base, Wilyer Abreu in right field, Danny Jansen at catcher, and Sadam Rafaela in center field with Brian Bayo pitching. Now, Brian Bayo came out of the game pretty early. He only pitched 4 innings, and he looked solid. He gave up 2 earned runs and recorded 4 strikeouts. He did walk 2, but between him and Tanner Houck, both of their most recent starts got cut short, and I think it's because Alex Cora is trying to make sure that they're good to go for next year and that their arms aren't completely worn out, so he's just not having them pitch as many innings at a time. But it was a confusing night in the late innings of this game because of the various roster moves that were made to adapt during the game to this lineup. So Wilyer Abreu was playing in right field. Nick Sogard came in to pinch hit for him and went to third base. He went 0 for 2 after coming in to pinch hit. But so he went for third base at that point. When he went in to play third base, Romy Gonzalez, who had been playing third base, had to shift into left field. So that moved him into the outfield because Abreu was out of the game, which made sense. So without Abreu in right, Romy got put into left field. Jarren Duran had been in left originally, so they moved him to center field at that point. And then Rafaela, who had been playing center, shifted over to right field. So that alone was a lot of moving parts in itself. Then you add in the fact that Tyler O'Neill came in to pinch run for Danny Jansen, who had gotten a hit in the 9th inning, and they wanted to have O'Neill pinch run to try to see if he can make something happen, but then a double play happened right after that, so it was a complete waste of a pinch runner. But so O'Neill replaced Jansen technically as the pinch runner, but then Connor Wong came into the game after that to replace Tyler O'Neill, because since Danny Jansen was out of the game at that point, Connor Wong needed to come in and catch. So he was technically, in the literal sense, just replacing Danny Jansen at catcher, but because O'Neill had already replaced Jansen, Wong was technically coming in as the pinch runner that pinch ran for Jansen to replace O'Neill. I mean, this gets so confusing. So then Wong came in to hit, and he hit in Yoshida's spot, which was the DH. So if the DH gets pinch hit for, then you lose the DH spot altogether, and then the pitcher has to hit. So Wong came in the DH spot to take out Yoshida, and then he went in to catch in the game. So because he went in to catch, that means that if it had gotten to the point in the 11th inning where the new person who came into the game had to hit, that would have technically been the pitcher. So if O'Neill's spot, which had technically been Jansen's spot originally, had come up to bat in the 11th inning, which they didn't need because they didn't play an 11th inning, then Chris Martin / Zach Penrod / whoever was pitching at the time would have had to go in and hit at that point. So then, because Nick Sogard had pinch hit for Wilyer Abreu, and then he got pulled from the game for Mickey Gasper, who came in as a pinch runner for him, and then played in the field at first base for Casas, which didn't actually end up technically happening. But if they had played another inning, Gasper would have been in at first base for Casas. So then he replaced Sogard. So then that would have led to Chase Shugart having to pitch, because he was the pitcher in the game for the Red Sox at the time. So if he had come in to pitch again in the 11th inning after that, he would have had to take an at bat, or whoever came in to pitch at that point. So there were tons of moves being made by Alex Cora, and a lot of it is driven by his desire to want to shake things up. And when he does bring in pinch hitters, sometimes it works out for him to the point where he finds success by saying, all right, let's try to throw, Nick Sogard in there and see if he makes something happen at the plate. And as soon as you bring in somebody to pinch run, it throws all of this off too. And you need to be able to figure out the right combination of players to put where in order to finish the baseball game. So it was kind of entertaining, actually, seeing how this was all handled by Alex Cora, but we've seen him do this multiple times this year, to where he's just completely swapped around lots of different guys in the lineup in the game so that he could try to get a pinch hitter in there, a new face that the opposing pitcher hasn't seen yet, so that they can try to throw them off. So it causes a lot of chaos, and it's really entertaining, but I call it playing chess for Alex Cora while everybody else is playing checkers. So it gets kind of funny when you're sitting there like, all right, so what happens now? Like, who's getting pulled now? So it definitely causes a lot of chaos, but it's fun, and it led to the Red Sox winning the game. So whatever works. Very confusing process, but it worked out in the end for Alex Cora and the Red Sox, as they won their 4th straight game in a 6-5, 10-inning win over the Blue Jays. So it was fun. Do they have a shot still to make the playoffs? Yes. But it would mean that they'd have to win out, and the Tigers would have to lose out, because the Tigers do have the tiebreaker against the Red Sox this year. So that likely won't happen, but I guess we will see. You just have to keep the faith, like I always say. Make sure you check out Locked On MLB after this show with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, who gives you the latest on all things going on around Major League Baseball. So he has you covered as we start to head into the playoffs here, with who all the teams are that are in the playoff party and what their chances are looking like. So you can find his show wherever you get your podcasts. Just check it out right after this. Go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.